and today's topic is all about podcasting. And as you can see, if you're watching the video, I have changed back to my boom and I'm testing it out in a different position. It's still taking me time to work it out to get the best result for my sound. And so something to consider if you're going to start a podcast, get used to the mic is all I can say. If you're interested in starting a podcast and you'd love to know some of the information that you need to be successful with that, hang around because I'm going to give you all of the goss that you need to set yourself up for success. If you've already got a podcast and you're not interested in this topic, go ahead and watch or listen to some of my other episodes of things that you might be interested in. And so let's just dive right in. It's podcast time. Well, I'll probably say podcast 101.
Welcome everyone to the Breast Hustle Podcast, where we talk all things women in business, leadership, and women's health. Hosted by Rachel Whittaker, owner and amazing inventor of the one-handed bra, Bra Easy. A podcast where she shares her journey on building a lingerie brand with a difference. And now, here's your host,
Hi everybody, welcome
Rachel.
back to the Breast Hustle with me, Rachel Whittaker. And why? Because the breast hustle is the best hustle. As you know, last week we spoke about in our content creation episodes that this one was going to be all about podcasting. I thought it's really fresh in my head, so it's a really good opportunity to go through some of the things that I had to do to build out my podcast and how I thought of it and how I understood that the whole thing worked and then what I found out how it actually works. So today, as we said, is going to be about podcasting. I've only been podcasting for a couple of months now, and a lot of my recordings that I did early on, I've been practicing fairly consistently to get the microphone right. At the end of the day, all of the people listening to your podcast really want to hear a good crystal clear sound. They don't want to be playing with their volumes on their phones. So there's a lot of things to consider as to the placement of where the microphone is. So you're not doing what I used to do, which was really annoying. And I spent a lot of time trying to fix that in my editing. So to save you the pain of having to edit that, what I've been told over again and again by a good friend who has been in podcasting for in excess, I think, of 20 years now, is that you need to be speaking to the end of the mic. And I know that when I was starting out, I was kind of all over and I didn't know where to place the mic. And being that I'm somebody who's quite energetic with my hands and when I'm speaking, I can't help but move. So I was consistently hitting the boom over and over again. And in one episode, I think it was 3 times. That's getting better. I did try last week to go to a desktop stand. So I moved my mic onto a desktop stand. I liked the sound. And it was a matter of playing around with the positioning, the volume, how much I could hear myself in my headphones so that I know that I'm giving a really clear sound without all of those super annoying. The key thing to podcasting is that you need to set up your RSS feed. And if you change that RSS feed location, which is basically a URL from what I can tell, then you're going to break all of your previous recordings from the new recordings. So the initial setup for podcasting, if you're going to get your website, and I found that WordPress is really easy for this. It has a really good connection with Blubrry, which is Blubrry. And I'll say it again, Blubrry. Everybody types in the full word as if it's the fruit, but it's not. It's Blubrry. And I'll make sure I put the link in the text that we've got for this as well, so that if you want to go and check it out, you can. You can, for a very small fee, get a Blubrry connection with your WordPress site, and they use the PowerPress app, and then each post that you do on your website then feeds into whatever podcast sites you've signed up for. And so in my case, I signed up for Apple because that is the biggest podcasting site. That's where everybody goes to listen to the podcasts. I know I do. And I'm sure a vast majority of you will be listening to your podcast and this podcast on Apple today. Of course, I also went to Google Play and a couple of others, Spotify. It's easy to sign up to multiple platforms, and in most cases they're free. And then you have that same feed going into each one. So you don't need to go and download it to each of those platforms. It has a single feed that comes from your website that goes into Blueberry, which then goes out to the world. You could go to wherever you feel like your audience listens to your topics and load it up. Some of the things you also have to have is it's great to have the text from the podcast as well. And so I make sure I go and get my captions out of Descript. And I think I spoke about that last week when we were talking about creating videos. Is another bonus to Descript. You can export that text into a Word document, which means if you're looking to write a book, which I am for later, I can actually capture all of my content that I spoke to in my podcast for use for later. You can also use some of those headings that you would then put onto an image and use it as part of your social media. You can take captions out of that document and put it as a single post, whether it be a text post, into Facebook and Instagram, onto Twitter, and even Pinterest in infographics. So there's lots of different ways that you can use the content that you're building out of this podcast. I find it really essential that I cover the podcast by doing a video as well. What that does is I can then put the video onto my social media or cut it up into chunks, and I've got content for the whole month. Yeah, it's just me, and I need to get some more people on and start to interview some people, which I've been practicing. So that's coming. And so it just won't be me talking to you all the time. And I think you guys would really appreciate that. I want to interview some really powerful, strong women and get some great information for you guys to help you build yourselves to be really successful. So podcasting, I built my WordPress website. I connected the PowerPress. I paid for the Blueberry. I paid for the domain. And then I started to record and kind of get used to, 1, the lighting for the videos, 2, the audio. What was the best mic? The previous mic that I had was a cheap one, and yeah, you could tell. So you get what you pay for. I was suggested that I go on and get this MXL BCD, which is a broadcast mic, and I found it really clear. So it's really easy when I'm going to edit later to get the information that I need. The text that comes across out of Descript has been amazing. It's really another good tool to use. You can get Descript for a small payment, and there are some extra funky stuff that they do on there. I always try and go in light at first, and then as I get better, more experience, should I say, then I can use the other tools that software can provide for the payment plan that I'm on. Don't go and sign up for something that's going to cost you a fortune. You might, and a lot of people do, start these podcasts and don't last. They've run out of topics. They're not sure who they should speak to. They're not really seeing the impact of the downloads. And as you're starting out, nobody knows you. So whilst you're building, just go really light with the expenses that you've got. I've spent a lot of money on video technology. So I've got lighting in my study because I use that when I create different videos for my brand, for Bra Easy. And that's been really helpful. I've got a green screen I can put up if I want to. And that's actually enabled me that I had most of the tools that I needed to start this podcast really quickly. It was just the mic. I lashed out and I bought myself some new headphones because they were pink or it's pink gold, I think. Because, yeah, who doesn't like some bling? Like, bring some bling to your office and make you happy. So other things that I've looked at with my podcast, it's like you would with all content, make sure that you have a schedule of topics that you want to go over and then do the research on those topics so that you can bring the best value to everybody watching you and listening to you. When I thought about what value I could add, the infographics that I was making up, which I've got all of the tools for that using Canva, using Photoshop, doing screenshots out of Premiere Pro from any text that I put up. The list goes on how you can leverage off such a simple thing. I've enjoyed creating all of the topics for my podcast so far, and the next step for me is to have the confidence to go and start interviewing people. So, interviewing women, let me be specific there, because I want to know what other women, I hit the boom again. I want to know what other women are doing and who do they look up to, and I've got so many questions. As you would know, I've always got lots of questions and I just want to bring you the best value. And some of the podcasts that I've been listening to, they kind of are a little bit fluffy and I want to dig in. I don't want to upset anyone, but I really want to dig in and get some of that detail. See how that goes. Maybe nobody will want to be a guest. Other things you need to do for your podcast is capture the images. So you've got some thumbnails for all of the different platforms that you're going to put that podcast onto. Maybe do some research around your SEO, and that will give you the ability to make sure that you're actually getting out there. So I've had steady increase to my website at thebreasthustle.com, and a number of people have been nice enough to leave messages on my YouTube videos when I've put them up, which is just the recording of the podcast. Some of those people are now following me on all my socials, so obviously that's working and people are liking the stuff that I'm starting to do. So when you're thinking about actually recording your podcast, you need to have a good camera if you're going to use that onto YouTube. And again, like I said, be it YouTube and now Facebook, you can put 10-minute videos onto Facebook quite easily, chop it up and put it onto Instagram. And so there's lots of benefit to be able to share. So if I was to make a checklist, the things that I'd suggest that you need to do is 1, buy a domain name. 2, make a WordPress site, because WordPress works the best for podcasting. Create your Blueberry account so that you can then push your RSS feed out to the multiple platforms. Sign up for Apple podcasting. Sign up for Google podcasting. Sign up for Spotify podcasting. And I think all of the Apple, Google and Spotify were all free. The only thing you need to pay for is the WordPress site or your hosting and, of course, the Blueberry account. You then need to commit yourself to a timeline of how often you're going to be creating these podcasts so that your audience knows when to look for you. I tried to do it fortnightly, but then I got too excited and went to weekly. So that's why you see me a little bit more frequently than I initially intended. So all of those things need to be in place so that when you've recorded your podcast, you've gone to Descript, you've taken out all of the ums in the text, you've put your closed captions on if you're going to put up in a video inside Premiere Pro from Descript. You've exported the text file so that you can put it into the Apple Podcast portion of your Blueberry account so that people can see the text as well. And there's a lot of people that want to see and read what you're talking about. You can take a thumbnail shot out of the video that you've done if you've recorded the whole podcast. Pick something that's going to stand out. For some reason, I tend to pull a lot of faces, so I always have a wealth of images that I could export that people, I think, love to laugh at me, but I don't care. You can laugh with me, you can laugh at me, but let's just all be laughing because that makes everybody happy, right? The other things you need to think about is that schedule of activities, the things that you're going to be doing. And then if you've committed to it, commit to it, do it. Schedule the time in to do the actual work. It takes a little bit of time once you've recorded the podcast to then go and do all the editing and then post it. Think about your hashtags on your different media, your tags inside YouTube. There's a lot to consider that you want to leverage off every time. And I'm not at the moment, I must say, I'm being quite lazy. I haven't leveraged off all of those things. I need to do more research and then I think it will get out to more people. But right now, whilst I'm practicing and I've not got this perfected yet, and maybe if I can get more than 2 podcasts through without me hitting the boom or the mic, I think that then maybe I can start to do it properly, because I didn't want 50,000 people to see the mess, the hot mess. I want 50,000 people to see a really good outcome of the podcast and the work that I've put in. So the amount of work you do reflects on the quality of the podcast that you're putting out. Make sure the topics are interesting. Make sure your headlines are interesting. And schedule the time to do it. Don't be scared to just start and practice and put it out there just so that your name is getting out there. And the more practice that you do, people can see that you improve over time and they might stick with you. So thank you everybody again for watching and listening to our podcast, The Breast Hustle with me, Rachel Whittaker. And I hope you subscribe and like and share. If you've got any questions, pop them into our chat. We would love to have discussions about how we can get better, because without you giving me that information, it's just me having a guess, asking my poor hubby, who I put through the ringer every week, to say, have you listened to my latest podcast? What did you think? Yeah, poor thing. He's of course he likes it because he's my hubby. But anyway, I will see you all next week, and we've got some exciting things coming. I will definitely put an infographic up on the website that you can download if you needed that checklist. And get out there. Don't be shy. Even if you don't continue with a podcast, at least you've had a try and you have built your skills. You'll get better at the mic, you'll get better at the camera, and those things are always going to come in handy in such a social media world today. So enjoy. Thank you all again for liking and subscribing, and we'll see you next week. Catch ya.